That snap, it just never gets old. It's always time well spent. Hi, my name is Vander Puchert and I'm a creative entrepreneur. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I use the experiential benefits of LEGO Serious Play in the design process. Now, a little bit about me. I am currently an independent design consultant. And when I talk about design, I talk about design thinking, innovation, those kind of things. I'm also a certified event designer. I want to show you how I bring LEGO Serious Play into some of the work that I do. To do that and show you how I do that, I need to explain to you a little bit, and hopefully not overwhelmingly, what the event design process is really about. You start off with a stakeholder. Now, in this world, the stakeholder is anyone that participates in your event. The person comes into your event, goes through things that you have designed, and then at the other end, the person exits differently. He has a different behavior. He's potentially transformed. So it's really about taking someone from entry behavior, considering that entry behavior, and then considering and designing for, with intent, the exit behavior. The event design process is in the first place, number one step is really figuring out who's the stakeholders, who's the most important people that you design for. You can't design for everybody. The second part is empathy. You have entry empathy and exit empathy. You want to discover what that person comes into your event like, what is their think and feel, and then how you want to influence them as they leave your event. Then finally, the frame. Now, the green block here, the change in frame, really refers to the event canvas. That is really a dashboard where you capture all these things. And there's a secret behind that, because remember, you have to go through all these two steps, remember everything, and then map it out on the event canvas. And in fact, you do an event canvas with each of the stakeholders and then finally bring it all together on one big canvas. And trust me, it's a massive load of sticky notes and thinking that needs to go on. When I started seeing this, I knew that there's something there for LEGO Serious Play. And then finally, the exciting part is in the process, it's also aligned with design thinking, is prototyping. Now, what they mean in prototyping is really about telling stories. So when you've gone through all this, you will have developed a narrative for your meeting or event. When you see this, I'm sure you're also foaming in the mouth and going, I'm going to plug LEGO Serious Play into everything here. In fact, I also found a colleague of ours, also a LEGO Serious Play facilitator, who actually built a whole a solution around how you can fill in the event canvas using LEGO Serious Play. So that's out there. Now, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to use LEGO Serious Play where it's really, really meaningful and where it makes a difference. So the first step, and the reason I've showed you all these steps, is that I realized that I needed to understand the purpose of each and every tool in the process. But not only just how the tool functions, because that was my first caveat. I tried to figure out how the tool functions to see how I can align LEGO Serious Play so that I can simulate the tool using LEGO Serious Play. But I don't agree that that is the right method. And luckily, I didn't go down that rabbit hole. What I started looking at is, how does the one tool feed into the other one? What is the actual outcome that I need to require from the one tool in the process, or the outcomes that I need my team to generate to go into the next step of the process? Now, that's step number one. Remember that one. Then I wanted to try and think about what is the strengths of LEGO Serious Play and what is the elements of LEGO Serious Play that I need to bring into the event design process to make it meaningful and align with the event design process. Now, of course, I totally buy into the idea that you're thinking with your hands, the lonely guy, all these things. It makes 100% sense. But I wanted to push it a little bit further. And then I started thinking around the word experience. Now, no matter what you do, and I know that a lot of us just shake our heads when people phone us up, and I'm sure this happened to you, to have LEGO Serious Play as a team building. But that being said, the case I'm trying to make is that LEGO Serious Play is undeniably an experience. People who love it or hate it remember it. They understand. They remember the experience they've had with LEGO Serious Play. And then when you refer to a book like Designing Experiences, in that book, they actually unpack that there's different kinds of experience that you can design for. So the two experience types that I found very, very, very important and as it relates to LEGO Serious Play is the words meaningful and memorable. Now, if you're a facilitator and you've done any work around LEGO Serious Play, you will know if you've set up the workshop properly, if you have asked the right questions and a team starts gelling and people are in flow, and afterwards one thing that is undeniable is that that workshop is definitely have been meaningful, and it's also memorable. People will always talk about it. The other thing that I also found interesting with Lego Serious Play, which was helped me contextualize why I want to build some of this into the event design process, is that the retention, the memory retention that people have, once they start building models, they remember things. I first of all thought, like, how would you document Lego Serious Play? And of course, there's methods, video, sticky notes, all these things. But I found personally that there's a lot of memory retention. So meaningful and memorable. Now, what is important with the words meaningful and memorable is you need to translate it into actions. Now, when it's meaningful, you are really thinking about emotion, and memorable is about discovery. Now, remember, I'm not really talking here about how you're defining your questions. I'm just talking about Lego Serious Play as fundamentally as a whole method. So when I thought that something needs to be around discovery, or perhaps discovery and emotion, I knew that I wanted to fit Lego Serious Play into that. Of course, then I still have the responsibility as a Lego Serious Play facilitator in that instance to then develop the questions within the context of that event. So let me take you back to the event design process again, and I tried to draw it out in a bit more of a clear way for you. Looking at stakeholder alignment, remember I told you that this is where you start looking at who you're designing for. Of course, here it's all about discovery, right? So definitely an opportunity to start using Lego Serious Play. So with discovery as the baseline, I could potentially use this Lego Serious Play here. Now, when it comes to empathy, the usual suspect, this is an empathy map. It's done by a company, Explain, and you will then stick sticky notes as you analyze your stakeholder and you start contextualizing and building a persona around your stakeholder. But once again, in the way that I've changed it, I set the empathy map aside. When it comes to empathy, it's really about emotion, walking in the shoes of the person that you're designing for. So remember, in this context, when you bring someone in to start doing something like empathy mapping, whatever, there's a whole bunch of research and knowledge sitting inside this person's head that needs to be unlocked, and then unlocked in such a way that it's shared with the team to build shared insights around the stakeholder. Sounds familiar, right? In a similar vein, and the same counts for this, is exit empathy. Now, this is really, in a way, also discovery. I actually skip the Eventcanvas because the Eventcanvas for me is really a dashboard where you bring all the knowledge and information that you've just gathered through the action and through the experience of Lego Serious Play to the canvas. So the canvas gets filled out per normal. And then finally, as you go into the event delta, something that I can talk about later if you're more interested to know about it, then going into the prototyping phase. Now, the prototyping is a bit of a toss-up because I've definitely done a lot of ideation work using Lego Serious Play, but sometimes I will opt for something like Playmobil Pro or something else where I still get people to work with their hands, but the application of it's a bit more literal to get the narrative of the event closer to something that can be executed. But by all means, something that definitely can be done by Lego Serious Play as well. Just as a quick recap, how did I use some of the tools with a little bit more detail? How did I use Lego Serious Play in the event design process? So as I mentioned, stakeholder analysis. You have, I started experimenting and using individual models. First of all, identifying, extracting from the group who they saw as stakeholders or people involved in the environment or the ecosystem of the event. And then either through using landscape in combination with red brick voting for who are the top stakeholders. Then there's empathy, both pre-empathy, how people go into your event, and then post-empathy, how people exit your event. And for that, I use individual models. And then at the end, I also get the team to, for both pre-empathy and for post-empathy, to build a combined model so that they fundamentally walk away from that model having a deep understanding and some agreement around what this stakeholder is about. And then finally, prototyping. Now, as I mentioned, I said that I tend to these days lean towards more literal prototyping tools. However, you can still use Lego Serious Play here. There I use individual models still to this day a lot for ideation. Nice, quick, fast turnaround. And then for a narrative, because remember, for the event design process, you need to end up with some kind of narrative, I would do a combined model where we bring all the models back into one big model. I know that I've skimmed straight through this process, and I probably have to do a little bit of a recap just to give you an idea of what I just been talking about. So first of all, tip 1, when you want to bring Lego Serious Play into the design process, my recommendation is that you don't just use Lego Serious Play to simulate a existing tool. I would rather look at what is the intended outcome that you want. Let me rephrase that. I would rather look at what is the intended outcome of the previous tool or the existing tool, and then figure out how I can use the Lego Serious Play method as it is to substitute that tool. Then the second thing that I think is important is to really figure out in your design process, where do you want people to slow down and where you want them to speed up, so that juxtaposition of time well spent and time well saved. And then finally, I spoke about meaningful and memorable experience. So I made the case, or I tried to make the case very briefly, that I think Lego Serious Play is not only just a design tool or a strategy tool, it's a very experiential tool, and you have this opportunity to leverage the power of experience, and specifically memorable and meaningful. And when we talk about memorable, we talk about discovery. You need to discover things for it to stick in your mind, to be memorable. And then meaningful taps into the world of emotion. Okay, great. So hopefully some of this made sense to you, and I hope that you found value in it. I'm personally super excited about it, and perhaps my overexcitement might cloud my ability to articulate myself properly, but I hope you got some value. And then finally, just as a quick recap, the 2 books I mentioned, the Event Design Handbook, really great book that I like. And even if you want to design better Lego Serious Play facilitation, I would probably also look at that. It's a bit of inspiration. Another book that I mentioned during the course of this is Designing Experiences. Really taps into the world of experience design, and I think Lego Serious Play is definitely not only a tool for strategy, but an experience and time definitely well spent. Yeah, so looking forward to connecting with you again soon, and thanks for watching.